What up? It's me, Fist Truck, coming at you with a review/rant, probably more rant than review to be honest, of Tales of Arise, 5 months late. Now I know you're wondering, hey, why is he doing a review for this game now? Well, it's simple. They came out with a trailer for the game recently, and that trailer is just showing off the game again. It's actually nothing new, but they knew I was about to do this review, so they were just prepping up your boy for doing something he should have done 5 months ago. Now, I just have to preface this review real quick by saying I don't really cover any of the technical stuff, so that would be like graphics, music, technical performance on PC. I really don't have much to say about that. There are other places that could definitely speak to that stuff better than I can. But you can bet your ass that all I talk about for the next 20 minutes is just the combat and the pacing, so if you really wanted to hear about that, you've come to the right place. I hope you like it, or at least find it informative. Quick thing before we get started, please feel free to gently caress and press that subscribe button so you can see when 3HP Games uploads more content like this or some other stuff that we do in the future. Alright, so I'm going to start with the gameplay, and by the gameplay I mean the combat. Why? Because you spend half the game doing it. So let's start with the good. First, it's instantly fun, which is great because, you know, like I say, you spend half the game doing it. And also, if you played the previous games in the Tales series, usually they start off pretty clunky, some more slow than others. I'm looking at you, Brazuria. I'm sorry, hot take, but I think the combat in that game is ass. And I played it for about 20 to 30 hours. Another good thing is that I borrow some elements from really good action games. Think Bayonetta or Devil May Cry. There's time dodges, there's juggling, there's a very, very fun combo system to take part in. And on top of that, there are these things called boost attacks that you can weave into combos to make sure that your character's stamina doesn't run out. The rate at which the game introduces these mechanics is really, really good because you're getting a grasp on one mechanic and then they throw something else in there and adds a little bit more depth that keeps it spicy. And before you know it, you're just doing all sorts of crazy stuff in combat. You have these insane combos and it's so goddamn fun. And to add to that, each character is playable, which is nothing new to the Tales franchise, but something that's unique in this game is that they're all fun. Now take everything I just said and then the fact that it took me about 70 or so hours to complete most things in the game, it stayed fun from start to finish, which I definitely want you to take into consideration because I'm about to go into the negatives and I might get ranty on one of them, so I'm sorry ahead of time. First, I'm going to start off with the fact that I don't think it goes enough into the action-y territory. This game does not have animation canceling, and it gets kind of annoying because the game moves at a pace where it should, especially considering that some of your characters' moves are insanely flashy. Like, your dude will be there for what feels like an eternity just trying to stun over an enemy, and when you started the move, the enemy got staggered or whatever it may be, and then while you dude's out there fucking pirouetting or whatever the hell he's doing, the enemy just gets up and just like bitch slaps you. You're like, oh, okay, all right, well, I'm not gonna use that move ever again because it's pointless. Now, once again, I understand that not every game needs animation canceling. Think of your Soulsborne games, Dark Souls, Bloodborne, Sekiro, and whatever else goes into that kind of genre. Those games are built around the fact that you cannot cancel out of animations. When you do an attack, you're committing to it because you are certain that you have the opening to do that attack. This game moves at a fast pace more akin to something like Bayonetta or Devil May Cry, those kinds of games. To not have that in this game feels like they may not have gotten a full grasp of what makes a truly great action combat system, and I hope that in future releases, assuming that they stick to this kind of combat, they throw that in there. Once again, thinking of games like Bayonetta and Devil May Cry, I know I'm beating a dead horse, but I just keep bringing those up because they're like the pinnacle of action combat. In those games, enemies rarely attack you from on screen. And if they do, usually it's because their attack started on screen and then, you know, the camera turned or whatever it may be and they went off screen. Otherwise, when enemies are off screen, it's usually their mission to get on screen so they can then attack you. Those games are mega fast paced, there's a lot of chaos in them, but you're always in control and you always feel like you're in control. In this game, I cannot tell you the amount of times you're getting attacked by stuff that's off screen. Now, the only indicators for off-screen attacks are when enemies casting magic, but otherwise, there's pretty much no way to tell that something's about to bitch slap you from off-screen. And that does include, for the most part, audio cues, because when you're fighting, it's your guy, and then all your teammates, and all the enemies, and everybody's shouting their anime bullshit, so in between, fire, then you'll just hear the random like, and then just get hit. It gets real annoying really fast. It's not the worst thing in the world, but I feel like the game should have done something to warn you when something is coming your way from off screen. Now, I know I was just talking about how in other action games, enemies don't attack you from off screen, but in this game, you have your teammates fighting off screen, so I understand enemies obviously also have to fight off screen. So what I think they should have done was take a page out of God of War 2018's book where there are indicators for when you're getting attacked from off screen. And that game even goes one step further by differentiating whether or not it's a melee or range attack. Now, you can take everything I just said about animation canceling and off-screen indicators, you could just throw that in the trash and it'd be okay. Overall, the game's combat is still really fun, and even without that stuff, it's great. However, with the next thing I'm about to talk about, this is a non-negotiable, and it's your teammates' AI. It's so frustratingly stupid. I'm surprised you don't see them just bumbling around in shit-filled diapers. They're so fucking stupid. I cannot believe that this made it past QA. So for me to fully explain this, I need to explain something called CP, which as a whole, I actually like. It's essentially a shared resource pool that is directly tied to your team's healing and recovery, all that kind of stuff. So if you want to heal, you pull from the CP pool. For the most part, the way that's implemented in the game, I think is actually pretty good because there's less reliance on just spamming heal and then magic or MP recovery items as you would in other JRPGs or previous Tales games. In this game, it feels more like a journey as you're going from rest point to rest point, and your CP pool continues to go down and down, and by the time you made to that rest point, it's almost like the way it feels in Dark Souls. You're like, oh my god, finally I made it. And it's overall it's good. However, since the healing that your teammates do is tied to the healing that you do, and there's more of a constraint on items in this game compared to previous ones, that means that when your teammates are eating shit, it leaves less room for error for when you eat shit. And let me tell you, your teammates will eat all the shit. Now, I play this game on hard or experience. I forgot the name of the difficulty, but it's the one above normal. I had fun. But once I got past the learning curve of the game's combat, which wasn't very long, easily the hardest part of the game was trying to manage how fucking stupid my teammates were. They would get hit by the same attacks over and over again, get killed by the same things over and over again. And in no way, shape, or form does their AI grow or develop throughout the game. It is as dumb in the beginning as it is in the end, except in the end, they have more options to choose from that they will never choose the right one. It's so fucking annoying. I'm sorry I'm getting ranty, I know, but just in case anybody happens to be in the comments going like, hey, that's not fair. You can set their behaviors and all that stuff. It's like, yes, I know you can set behaviors. You can always do that in these games. However, their behaviors are 20 different kinds of stupid. There's so many options for their behaviors, and all of them are dumpster. Like, they're fucking trash. They don't do the goddamn thing. I just want the option that makes them not be as dumb as they currently are and not die as much as they currently do. They could take a pace out of the East Games book where when you dodge, they dodge. Something as simple as that. That would have been great. Or, God forbid, just have them take less damage. When you're not controlling a character, they take like, honestly, for how stupid this game's AI is, probably take half as much damage or a quarter as much damage. It's nuts how much they get hurt. Now, I get that the AI can't just carry you through the game. I understand that. It's okay for them to get hurt, but just at the rate they get hurt and how frequently it is to the same exact attacks. Like, there's just one big lizard monster thing that you fight, and it has this one tongue attack that it always does. It'll yell or roar or whatever the fuck a lizard does at high volumes. It'll swipe his tongue horizontally. I would just stand there and watch them get hit by the same attack over again. The attack that was dodge bait for me, because in this game, the cool thing is that when you land your time dodge, you could do a counter attack that does extra damage. The attack that was dodge bait for me was like putting a gun to the back of my teammates' heads, and I'm sorry, it got so frustrating. That whole deal with AI is the sole reason why I refuse to play through this game on the hardest difficulty. In games with combat like this, I truly enjoy playing through all the difficulties. Devil May Cry, I've done the Dante Must Die, Hell in Hell, Bayonetta, I've done the Infinite Climax, and at least for the first God of War game, 2005, I played through that on God mode. I wouldn't recommend anybody does that. That was torture. Nonetheless, it's fun to, there's that skill ceiling and all that kind of stuff here. But the thing is that I know if I play this game at the hardest difficulty, the bots are just going to hold me back even more, and that's going to be me micromanaging how they use items and stuff even more, because if you just leave them to their own devices, they will just blast through your whole item pool. Also, there's times where I'm dying and I'm like, yo, can you heal me? I just please, may I just have one crumb of healing, please? And they look at me like, no, kid, you're ugly, and I hope you die. And then I die, and then I have to use a fucking resurrection item. I'm sorry, I'm done talking about this. I know I spent a lot of time talking about how stupid the AI is, but let me clarify. The combat was fun from start to finish. I thoroughly enjoy this game's combat. It's good. It's really good. All right, so with the combat out of the way, now we can start talking about the game's pacing and to a very small extent, the game's story. So I'm gonna start off with the fact that this game has some great pacing for the most part. There's a great flow of story, combat, exploration, dungeons, so on and so forth. You won't get bogged down by the auxiliary systems such as crafting, skill trees, equipment, farming, fishing, and probably other stuff I'm forgetting right now. And to get into those real quick, crafting, so simple, you could go through the whole game and not do it, because that's exactly what I did. I didn't even pay attention to crafting until I had beaten the game's hardest boss. This game does have skill trees in a sort of way. It's tied to the game's title system, where when you get a new title, it unlocks a new set of skills and upgrades that you can purchase for that character. Equipment is nothing crazy. You have accessories, armor, weapon. Is not much to manage. Farming is as simple as hitting one button. And fishing is a brain-dead easy minigame. It's nice if you want to pass the time. I never really get into fishing in the games that I play, but if you do, this one's pretty good. Getting into exploration, environments are vibrant, varied, and they feel natural most importantly. They're nowhere near as flat as they used to be in the previous games. And some of the environments can feel large, but they don't feel overwhelmingly large, and usually exploring off the beaten path is almost always worth your time. Dungeons are kind of a mixed bag. Some of them are really interesting in design, and that whole CP thing I was talking about before, you could actually use some of them to open up different pathways in dungeons. At least that's how it's introduced to you. Then it kind of devolves into, you know, it's just a tax you pay to get to a treasure chest or something. Some dungeons are interesting, others feel a little bit throwaway. But as a whole, I think the dungeons in this game are a step up when compared to previous entries. Also, something to attach to the exploration are side quests. There are a fair amount of side quests in this game, and in terms of substance, they're MMO level, as in, hey, go here, kill X amount of enemy, or go here and find this fucking mushroom or something. Half the side quests feel like they're, hey, go kill this boss that's just a gigantic version of an enemy you fought like 30 times already. But still, the writing for the side quests tends to be pretty fun, and there's never an overwhelming amount of side quests. Like, think of insert Ubisoft game here, you know, when you climb the tower and then your map is filled with a whole bunch of shit. This game never gets to that point. And for those side quests I talked about where you have to kill X amount of things or fight boss that's just a giant version of something you fought before, it's more combat and the combat's fun. The game story I don't think is anything new when it comes to this kind of game. It's fine. I mostly never had an issue with it. It's more weeb shit. If you're into anime already, I assume you're gonna eat this shit up. I'm kind of indifferent about anime. I really don't watch it. But when it comes to levels of cheese, I thought this game was pretty good with that. If you really don't like anime, then this isn't going to change your mind. Now, something I did find kind of funny about the game's plot was it's incredibly far from subtle romance subplot. It's it's as subtle as like, hey, yo, you got a square vagina, well, I got a square dick, so we should do something about this. It's as predictable as it gets, but it's fine, so I can't really complain about it. And then the story kind of falls apart towards the end, but I'm going to get into that after I get through the rest of the pacing. So once again, with the game's pacing, it's super solid. For about 2/3 of the game, it felt like the perfect balance of just, you know, story, combat, exploration, all dungeons, bosses, all sorts of stuff. I kept playing the game and playing the game and playing the game, and time was just flying by. It was really good, and I haven't had that experience with a JRPG in a bit, though I still haven't played Persona 5 all that much, so cut me some slack there. But it was really good. And for JRPGs, I think that needs to be applauded, because most JRPGs have some dog-ass pacing in the beginning. It takes like 3 hours for them to get started, and then they finally open up, and then you can start having fun with them, and then they're like 60 hours long, and usually there are always parts that drag in between that. This game has less of that, sort of, and I think that's probably why it's gotten more attention than the typical Tales entries do, because aside from better production values, a better combat system, it being the first Tales game on new generation hardware, and the first Tales game in quite some time, it's very approachable. If you don't typically play these kinds of games, a huge turnoff is starting the game up and then being bored to tears for like 2 to 3 hours. This game, you first swing at stuff within the first, I don't know, 30 minutes. And even then, those 30 minutes leading up to combat are fun. It's fine. The story, the exposition is fine. So it's with all that being taken into account that it kind of sucks that about 2/3 of the way through the game, or in the game's second part, or second half, if you will, though that second half is smaller than the first half. That whole perfect pacing I was talking about, where it's in the right balance between everything, is just completely gone. And then what you get are dungeons that are just like room after room after room of similar looking rooms. Almost every enemy fight devolves into enemies that take fucking forever to kill, especially in the game's last dungeon. Pretty much every fight is against a mini boss type enemy. There's a section of the game that, I shit you not, is like 2 to 3 hours long, and it's nothing but exposition and plot and exposition and more plot. There's a point where the cutscene stops. You're in a hallway. You cannot leave the hallway. You can only walk forward. And when you walk forward, it triggers more cutscenes. I'm like, what the fuck was the point? Just have more cutscenes play. It was pretty nuts. And that also coincides with the story kind of going out of the window. I'm not going to get into spoilers, but the game story is standard enough. There's oppressive people. You hate oppressor. You team up with other people who hate oppressor. You fight oppressor. But then at some point, in typical JRPG form, that has to somehow turn into we're trying to save the world or the universe or whatever the fuck it may be. You know, it's typical JRPG fare. Some games ease into that whole thing. Other games don't spit on it before they just shove it in there. And this is definitely the latter. Now, they kind of allude to this through some little bits in the plot before it gets to this point. However, when I say this shit goes off the rails, you just got to see it for yourself. And in order to make that whole it going off the rails part make sense, it takes 2 to 3 hours of exposition, of just plot dump. And I feel that, personally, if you just chopped off that whole last third of the game might be better. Or maybe if you just took that whole last third, condensed it, and then changed the plot to more smoothly fit with the rest of the game as a whole would have been better. While I didn't absolutely hate that last part, I think the game is worse for it. Another thing is that, and I was talking about the enemies previously, the enemy palette swaps in this game are fucking hilarious. The wolves that you see in the beginning of the game, you fight wolves at the end of the game. I'm sorry. They're just different colors. And the thing is that the moves don't really evolve either. The enemy movesets kind of evolve about halfway through the game. So, you know, at first, like, the wolf will just come up to you and try and run into you or bite you. Now the wolf kick flips or does a backflip. That's it. That's the end of that. The wolf only does a backflip for the rest of the game. I think you felt like boars or something like that early on in the game. Guess what you'll be seeing for the rest of the game? That's right, boars. And that does include the optional dungeon at the end of the game. That's like post-game content. Pretty much a lot of the bosses are just regular enemy you fight, enhanced. Like, they just motherfucker ate his Wheaties in the morning and now he's huge. Like, that's the boss. And it's funny enough that there are about 2 or 3 points in the game where you fight a boss, and then the literal next area you go to, that boss is an enemy roaming around in the environment. I get in the case with this game, new hardware, new generation, new combat. It's a lot of new stuff here. They probably didn't have time to develop enough variety with the enemies. I understand, but I gotta call it like it is, and the palette swaps are crazy. I know palette swaps are a JRPG thing. I've been playing JRPG since I've been a child. I understand. That doesn't excuse me seeing the same wolf the whole game. Let's say that here you are, planet Earth. You go to the woods, you decide to duke it out with a bear. Somehow you win. You are so afraid of the bear. You're so afraid of fighting the bear again that you hop in a spaceship because you might be Richard Branson. You go to like a different planet. You just go to a different planet with no atmosphere or oxygen or anything. Life as you know it on Earth is impossible on this planet. And guess what? Now that bear, he's fucking green and he's mad and he's gonna fuck you up. And it takes like 5 minutes for you to get that ship off the ground. And it's like a super bear. So where the first bear just tried to maul you, this bear also fires a laser beam out of its mouth or some shit like that. That's what the enemy design in this game is, where you're like, what the fuck is a wolf doing here? I digress. Pacing as a whole is good, though if at some point during that last part of the game you're just like, what? Or what happened? I would 100% agree with you. One last thing to the game's pacing. The game's bosses are fun and exciting to fight for the most part, especially the main unique bosses, who also tend to be a spectacle as well. Now, when it comes to difficulty scaling and pacing, for some odd reason, the game's third boss, which is also the second main boss, is crazy fucking hard. That is easily the point where I die the most, and it's because the guy has a DPS check for some reason, because they thought it'd be good to have a DPS check in this game. I don't understand why. Nonetheless, you fuck it up, and then the guy goes, indignation, and then your whole party gets ass pounded. It's crazy annoying. I don't know if I'm just ass at the game, or if that's a thing that everyone else experienced, but literally no other boss has that issue. And this also does include the game's last optional boss, which technically should be the hardest boss in the game. Definitely has nothing on this third boss. Now, for those who care about numbers, this game took about 50 hours or so to beat. I did most of the side quests that I came across along the way, but by no way does that mean doing all the side quests. It took an additional 20 hours or so for me to complete the remainder of the game's content, aside from the fishing, which really isn't my cup of tea. But aside from that, I did do all the optional bosses, got my characters to max level, and did do all the side quests. Now, when it comes to replay value, previous Tales games had something called the grade system. It was a currency that you earn as you fight, and then you can use that currency to buy upgrades such as being able to carry your stats over from playthrough to playthrough. This game doesn't have that system anymore. Instead, what it has are these items that you can find that serve the same purpose. So you find the item, you carry your stats over to the next playthrough. You can find all those items on a single playthrough, which I did, so every subsequent playthrough I do is just a slapfest, and to me that's just generally uninteresting. So I don't see much reason to play through the game again, and because of the aforementioned issues with the AI, I have really no desire to play through the game on any other harder difficulty than the one I had already played through. Now, with all that being said, still 72 hours of playtime is nothing to scoff at, and as far as I'm concerned, that's more than enough. Now, just to talk about the game's DLC real quick, it's really dumb and confusing. I don't get why they did what they did, but let's just get into it. Now, you can buy costumes for the characters, which in itself is inoffensive to me, but the thing is that the costumes also give titles, which then gives you skills to purchase, which therefore means that the costumes are also boosts. And then on top of that, they also sell experience and gold, so you can buy boost out the yin yang in this game. And during my whole playtime, and this does count all the optional content, not once did I ever feel the need to grind. So I'm not sure why they have this there. It's like, do you want people to play the game? I mean, they don't even need to buy this, so I don't get why I have it there in the first place, but at least it's not like Assassin's Creed Odyssey where they have the experience for you to buy and the game is an absolute grind fest, so it could be worse, but still, this DLC is kind of stupid. On top of that, the only bit of actual content is a collaboration with Sword Art Online, which I'm just going to say I know absolutely nothing about. But what I do know is that that content only consists of one fight and a costume, which is kind of worthless to me. So far, DLC in this game is ass, but to be fair, this game isn't about the content that comes out after the fact. This game is a complete package, so I can't complain much when it comes to that. And there's one plot point that definitely doesn't get wrapped up by the end of the game, but I think that was more sequel bait than setting up for DLC, but I guess we'll find out about that in the future. Thank you so much for listening to and watching this video. I know I got ranty, but I had some things to say. That was the only productive way for me to say them and feel good about it. Now, I'm not using a rating system, but if I were to give this a rating, I'll just give it a Michael out of Jordan, and I can easily recommend this game. When it comes to JRPGs, this is easily one of the most accessible ones, and when it comes to the Tales franchise, this is easily the most accessible one. Not only that, but it looks like it's the first Tales game in a long time to have an actual budget behind it. So by that, I assume that they're going to be kind of sticking in this direction going forward. And if any future games are like this, or more importantly, an upgrade of this, then I think things are only looking good for the Tales franchise. Once again, thank you for watching. I've been Fist Truck. You can follow me at twitch.tv/fisttruck or my own YouTube channel. Please like the video, or if you didn't like it, leave, because dislikes hurt my feelings. And subscribe to the 3HP Games YouTube channel, where we will post more content like this. And also we have some videos of Snarf and I playing through Ninja Gaiden Sigma 2, or we're currently playing through Resident Evil 7. So until next time, deuces!